Make your peace right now, all you parents in the land, with the idea that your children will suffer their greatest wounds at your hands. It's just how it goes. Kids lie to not be seen for who they really are. And we teach them to lie. Our thoughts are creating our reality. And whatever colored lenses we are peering at the world through, that is the way we will see our child. You cannot control a child who has lost control of themselves. Just because I work with parents, it doesn't mean that the parent was responsible for the struggles the child is having. It's not a pointing the finger of blame at parents, parents do your work, but rather to say, even if you didn't cause it, you are the only one with the actual power to change anything.
This episode is brought to you by Nail It and Scale It, the world's leading fast growth program for businesses. If you have ever wanted to grow your business faster than what you can right now, if you need to make more revenue, if you need more leads, if you need more clients, if you need to know how to plan your business in a strategic way in order to hit big goals, if you need to learn how to scale your business and grow your team and your business so that you have more freedom, then this program is for you. Imagine 3 days immersed with me where we cover all aspects of business, but we do it from an immersive but also an execution standpoint. We execute every step of the way. And we're looking at 5 key areas. We're looking at your psychology. We're looking at your marketing, your sales, your leadership, and we're looking at your planning and how we integrate these 5 key areas to grow your business and your brand quickly. So if you'd like to find out more information, kerwinray.com. But ladies and gentlemen, oh my God, we are welcoming back to Unstoppable, the one, the only. And I said this just when you got on. You literally have I think total consumed views of your micro content more than any other podcast guest. But I'd have to say combined, I think last time we checked, there was something close to like 30 million views from your micro content alone. So it's very safe to say that you're a very popular feature here on Unstoppable. So welcome back.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. Now, first and foremost, as I said, you have probably been one of our most popular podcast guests. You have absolutely been one of our most popular, if not our very most popular speakers that we have come in and speak to our K2 community. I am pretty sure you're the only speaker that we've ever had come back 3 times. Is that right? Is that how many times we've had you come back now?
That's true.
And that either says one or two things. That says we either love you loads or we have a lot of issues when it comes to our kids or a bit of both. But what I can say, for those people who've listened to Vanessa before, you'll know, where her genius lies. For those of you who haven't, you really are in for an incredible opportunity to not just drink from a fire hose, drink from a hydrant. When it comes to the wealth of knowledge. And as we were just joking about, some people, those that can do and those that can't teach. And, we're one of those lucky kind of people where we do, and we get to learn and teach at the same time, which is so cool. So it's great to have you back. What have you been up to, firstly?
Well, I've been up to a lot of things. I've been writing some books. I've been doing lots of worky sorts of things. And I've been living life as a mom, sorting it out with my 2 now teenage boys, how this is even possible. And I'm newly engaged. So that's kind of crazy too.
And that's and that's very exciting news. But to kick it off, you're obviously engaged now, which is incredibly exciting. But you've also got another book that came out since we last spoke. What was that book?
It's called Parenting Right from the Start. And it really was intended as a guide for parents of, young children, the under 3 crowd. And the reality is, it really is a book for anybody who's ever been a human.
So basically anyone who's ever been a human. So if you've got a pulse, it can be for you. And this is the beautiful thing I've learned about parenting, and especially when I read your content, speak to you, but also work with my son. And this is going to add context to that statement. One of the things that I found is the more I learn how to parent my son, the more I learn how to parent myself. And it's been such a key distinction when it comes to reparenting and as a part of my healing process of my journey. And yeah, you've played a huge role in that. But I am curious to know, like, since we spoke, that was, Maddie, when was that? 2016, 2017. So that was about 3 years ago. Wow, it feels like 10 years ago. Has much changed in the area of traditional parenting in the terms of the dynamics and the types of questions that you get asked? And especially since COVID has hit, have you now found that the bigger questions that you get have changed as a result of the new type of world that we live in?
I think the interesting impact of COVID for parents and for kids is that it took whatever the pre-existing baseline was and it polarized it. And so for parents that were just getting ready to tip into the world of, like what is really going on with my kid and what's really going on with me, they were able to push this giant pause button and get all of this kind of squishy together time locked up in their houses and really explore that. And on the other end, I have seen parents and kids who for whom there was probably already a significant struggle, and COVID has just really magnified that. And so I see a lot of kids and a lot of families in crisis right now.
So have the types of the issues that you've seen create crises change in the last 4 months as a result of COVID? Because obviously, like you're one of the best people in the world when it comes to like learning and understanding how to work with kids. And so your bread and butter is every day sitting down with parents and kids and having parents tell you their issues and you working through them. Have you noticed a significant shift in what those issues are? Or as you say, is it just an amplification of what's already there? It's just become a lot brighter and a lot louder.
Yeah, it's an amplification of what was already there. And I actually think that that is the universal gift of COVID, that we didn't have an opportunity anymore to kind of sneak away from the things that we tried to avoid looking at, that we were all pinned down by that and had to stare it in the face, whatever the lesson was that we were all waiting to learn. And so I
And
do
there's
see amplification as sort of the primary thing. Yeah.
You're right, and there's so many lessons for all of us to learn. But what I find very curious is, most people get more education when it comes to get before they get their license than they do before they get a child, which kind of lends itself to a lot of the potential issues that we might be looking at, today socially as a culture. So I think as a good baseline, when you talk about parenting or when you're sitting with a parent, how do you define the role of a parent? Because that seems like a pretty big label, and a lot of people get given this label, yet they don't. No one got given a job description. Do you know what I mean? But from your perspective, with what you know, when you look at the label of a parent, what is the role of a parent?
hmm I think the role of a parent is to welcome into this lifetime the child that you have been gifted, to find yourself in a powerful lead position, not yucky power, loving, nurturing, powerful lead position of the child so that they can be guided through their developmental journey in a way that allows them to come into the biggest, fullest, most extraordinary expression of themselves. And so the parent births the child into the world, and then the parent births the child into themselves. And along the way, learns a thing or two about themselves as a human as well, the parent does.
Okay, so that's the role. That's the role of the parent. That's a pretty good structure there, a good archetype. But what's the goal of a parent? And I know that might be individual, but let's look at it on a common language, in a common
Mhm.
theme.
I think the goal of a parent is to make sure that you get out of the child's way, that you pave the path in so much as it is possible, and that you provide a safe harbor and also a launching pad for the child as they move through. The goal is that the child gets to actualize into who they are, and your goal as a parent is to ensure that that happens.
And that comes with a lot of independence, doesn't it, for a child?
Yeah, and I'm always really careful about that word because the word independence, we have this like really twisted love affair with it in the realm
Mm.
of parenting, where we have attached all of this value to the facade of independence. And so when our babies sleep well, we're doing it right. When our kids are well behaved, we're doing it right. When our kids can, manage their routines and figure themselves out, even from the very early stages of life, then we give ourselves this big pat on the back as parents that we're doing it right. But the reality is our kids don't need independence to be independent. They need dependence to be independent. And so we have to be careful to understand that the path to independence is not through independence.
And actually, the path to independence, and this is one of the things I've learned through you, is the importance of allowing that to happen organically. And I think we have this misconception as parents where our goal is, well, we want our kids to be independent, but we just kind of get the timeline wrong. instead of it being by the age of 20, 25, we're thinking, how do we get this person to be independent by the age of 6 or 7? And I think unknowingly and unwittingly, oftentimes we subject our kids to, in most cases, emotional trauma as a result of our pursuit for their independence. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I think the question upon us then becomes, why is it that we have placed such value on our children appearing to be independent? And the answer, I believe, lies within our own subconscious programming. We place value on that because we derive value from it ourselves. We believe ourselves to be more worthy, more valuable, a better parent, doing it right, if our kids sort of have this facade of doing it right. And so we get all hyped up about that, but it really is the wrong thing to be focused on.
And we have this whole concept now that's been introduced, and it's almost become a part of popular psychology, in the way that people explain and compare relationship dynamics. We hear terms being used a lot more now, like codependence. And codependence, as a trait, as a behavior, is a lot more mainstream now than even what it was probably 3, 4, 5 years ago. But what I found really interesting is the relationship between our pursuit for independence with our children and the production of codependence in the process. So I'm curious from your perspective if you've seen a link between the two.
Mm-hmm. So I think about codependence in a couple of ways. I think about enmeshment, where we fail to recognize, as the grown-ups in all of this, that our children are not us and we are not them. And so we start to become, if you can think about some Venn diagrams that are overlapping, we start to become very enmeshed with our children, and we are deriving our own meaning out of life from the performance of our children. The other way that I think about codependence is in not speaking your truth for fear of upsetting the other, and then they won't love you. And I really think that if we were to talk about one of the greatest challenges facing parents today, in fact, so great that it's likely an epidemic, it is that parents are fearful of being the parent for fear of the child not loving them. And so if you crawl behind that, there's a need from the parent that the child will express to the parent love, that the child will show to the parent love. And whenever we go to our children with those kinds of needs, we get into that codependent kind of dance. And we provide our children their very first relationship template. They learn how to do relationship. As a social species, they learn how to do relationship from us. We are teaching them a lot of things in that codependent dynamic. And so really to be able to pull the lens back and look at ourselves from the outside and watch what our motives are. I think that I often say to parents, what was your intention? What was the intention behind what it was that you said to your child that day last week? What was the intention? And oftentimes when we drill down into that, the intention is self-serving, and we need for it to be nothing to do with us. We need to just be allowing the child to unfold into their greatest potential.
So when it comes to parenting, as I said, no one got the user's manual. It's like life, really. No one gave us the user's manual for life, and then they made it more interesting by giving us the ability to reproduce, and then we had to manage someone else's life and have no user's manual for that either. But where do we start? Like, you've obviously been in this for decades. You've worked both on the child side and the parental side. One of the things I love about Cesar Millan is how he says, I never train dogs. He says, I rehabilitate dogs and I train humans. And I'm curious from your perspective if there's a similar correlation between those dynamics of when you are, I guess, working with the parent. Is that the framework that you normally see?
Yeah, so I'm now, coming up on 20 years into my career. Yeah. Shocking but true. And I don't work with kids anymore because I have learned that is, with a few sort of extraordinary exceptions, that is wasted time and wasted effort. When I work with parents, now we're talking, because the parent then goes home to the child 24/7. And so I know that the work that I do with parents carries with it the very real likelihood that we can change the world of a child. And so, so I've learned that the work has to be focused on the parent, because the parent is the one creating the environment around the child, and that environment is what is creating the child's mind. And so that's where all the work begins. The other thing that I have learned is that just because I work with parents, it doesn't mean that the parent was responsible for the struggles the child is having. And so it's not a pointing the finger of blame at parents. Parents, do your work. But rather to say, even if you didn't cause it, you are the only one with the actual power to change anything. And so that's why we engage with parents. That's why I work with parents.
And so when you start working with a parent, like where do you engage? At what level? And obviously it's going to be different depending on the variables and the person that you're speaking with. But have you noticed some consistent themes that, look, as a basic rule, when I'm working with a parent, we start here?
So I always ask one question. And the question is, what is the greatest challenge upon you right now as a parent? I ask it through the parent perspective. I don't say, what's the greatest challenge your child is facing? I say, what is the greatest challenge you are facing as a parent? And then I always know that the conversation is going to go one of three directions. One is that we're going to start a very in-depth conversation about the parent's program and the kinds of thing the parent has going on. The second is that we're going to have a conversation about development and the realities of child development and how that is manifesting for their child. And the third is that we're going to discuss ways to then step in depending on what the dynamics are at play. And so each of those areas, of course, takes us down a massive rabbit hole, doesn't it?
And I guess that's where, for those people who are listening at home, they might go, well, where do I start? Like, if I am going to start working on myself, like, where would be the best place for me to start as a parent? Is there a 1, 2, 3?
Yeah. So I think, this whole, you hear sort of a lot, do your work. You have to do your own work.
Yeah.
And people
Yeah.
are often like, what does that
You're like, well,
mean
what does that
even?
look like? What does that mean? Like, I cleaned my house, I washed the car, the dog's been fed. Like, where's my good child now? It's like, yeah, what does that mean?
So for every parent that's listening, I would say, think about the last time you had a big judgment about your child. My child should be more cooperative. My child should not embarrass me out in public. My child should work harder at school, whatever it is. And then I want you to pause and understand that all of that's a story. You just made it all up and none of it is real. And I don't say that in a way to take away from your experience of that. Obviously, that's a judgment for you. And so you're having a real lived experience around it. But if we just pushed pause and recognized that that was a crust, it was a crust of a story. And if we crack the crust open and crawl inside, what we will find is that 5 other people could be standing around your child right now and viewing that exact same situation entirely differently. And so when we understand that, then we recognize that our thoughts are creating our reality. And whatever colored lenses we are peering at the world through, that is the way we will see our child. And so if we have come into our life with this ongoing story or program about being a victim, as one of our subconscious programs, then our child will be doing these things to us, and they will be intentionally pushing our buttons and manipulating the situation. So we will see our child the way that we see ourselves. And so the place to begin then is to understand that you have to take the finger back. When you're pointing the finger at your child, you have 3 fingers pointing back at you. So why don't you get started with you and understand, where did the judgment originate from? You get all that cleaned up, and then you step in as a parent. You step in clean, and you step in solid, and you step in full of swagger, and your child will be like, oh, there you are.
Do you think one of the biggest challenges parents have when it comes to being a parent is they're leading from the place of the child? And what I mean by that is they're just as reactive as the child. Their buttons are just as available as the child. And so, in some dynamics, you look at it and you're like, I'm not even sure who the parent is here. Like, it seems to be that there's 2 children here debating on an outcome.
Yeah. So the world is full of people walking around in adult bodies, but they're really children walking around in adult bodies. I mean, we are all here just
And I'd
trying.
go as far as to say that it's a vast majority of humanity, by the way. That's my
Yeah.
perspective.
Absolutely. And I think all of us, I always say we're all the ages that we have ever been. And so all of
Mm.
us have all of our child selves within us. And all overreaction will always be an age regression. All overreaction will always be an age regression. And so if you are blah at your child, then you have turned into your child. And in fact, the more that I do this work, what I see happening day in and day out is that whatever age or stage your child is coming through, your reaction to what's happening for them is probably propelling you backwards in time to when you were that child's age. So I was speaking to a dad the other day. His son is 11 and struggling with all of these things. And he was trying to, give me the story, the crust around this whole situation. And then I paused him and I said, and what was happening for you when you were 11? And he was like, how did you know that? I said, exactly. I know that because you see your 11-year-old as so challenged and living a life that's so full of struggle. And so we are always, when we're having our worst yelly, shouty, hot mess parenting moments, and I have them too, we all do, we have become a child version of ourselves.
Mm. So how does that help Debbie in Kingston or Regina, who's, she's a single mum, she's at home, she's trying to make ends meet, her buttons are on the table, she's having a moment, she can see herself about to lose it, but she has that awareness to go, okay, I can see that my child is about to come out to play right now. I know how this is going to go down. What do I do? What
Mm-hmm.
do I do to prevent me from going down this path that I've gone down 100 times before that I know is how it's going to end? How do I turn left?
Yeah. And so while you still have one cortical cell, left online in your brain, you take a breath in and you
Yeah.
sit in the present moment. And I want you
Mm.
in those moments, Debbie, is her name Debbie? And I love that
Debbie,
you just
yeah.
rattled off a bunch of Canadian cities. It's well done. For Debbie to know that it is not her grown-up self that has entered the building, entered the room, entered the scene when she feels all of that. And so when we can land as parents on the idea that, yeah, our child self is about to come out to play or raise all hell, but also present is our adult self. So take a breath and just know you do have this in you. You have it in you to hold ground, to stay present in the moment. And if you really feel like you're not going to be able to, it is far better to exit gracefully, stage left. And what I mean by that is don't stay. Like if you can see that the train is about to derail and you are going to barf all of that energy all over your child and then have a big mess to clean up for them and for yourself afterwards, get out of there, but get out of there gracefully. Don't say to your kid, that's enough. I can't handle you right now. Blah, blah, blah. You just say, oh, I really have to go pee. I'll be right back.
Mm.
And you leave,
Mm.
and then you go and collect yourself. Take a series
Mm.
of big, deep belly breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. It's going to counteract what's going on in your nervous system. It'll allow you to stay a little bit more present, and that's going to get you through that moment. But the other thing to really be aware of as a parent is that we can't continually live our life in the crisis moments. We have to, at some point, outside of the crisis moments, get to work, so that we're not just leaving it for when, we're smashing into the brick wall of parenthood and feeling like we can't hold ourselves together.
And probably most of those moments happen in the moment of a disciplinary action or when discipline or a boundary is trying to take place. And so I think this is a good segue to actually start looking at maybe what the construct of discipline is, what it should look like, what it shouldn't look like, and more importantly, what the goal of discipline actually is, or the goal of the boundaries in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So the first parallel I'll use, and again, I use Cesar Millan a lot, and I think there's a lot of commonalities between puppies and kids, and I have no issue saying that because to me they're in the same ballpark. But one of the things I've learned when you're working with a puppy is the importance of strong, consistent, assertive but calm boundaries determine the profile and the personality expression profile of the dog. And what I mean by that is the potential anxiety. And what I've
Mm-hmm.
noticed is when you try to train a dog, and if you're not continuous and not strong and calm and assertive, then the dog just takes the piss. and it just and those boundaries don't stick. And I've gone, wow, there's a really strong correlation between puppies and kids. Like when I started, when Noah came along and I started going through this phase, I was like, oh my God, it is relentless. But it's like it's like being in puppy school 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, where there's not one correction that you can miss or you can, I guess you can, there's many that we do, but we've got to ideally do it from this space where we are calm, but we are firm, but we're actually putting something in place that is actually going to create the desired outcome and not a counter outcome to that. Because this is something that you and I have talked about before, how oftentimes discipline becomes this role of intimidation, it becomes this role of aggression, it becomes this role that is fear and threat based. And so as a result, children are governed from the ages of when they're born until the age of 13, 14, 15 by fear. And then they reach this age where, hold on, I'm now as tall as you. I'm now almost as big as you. I'm not as scared of you anymore. And you know what? I don't respond to your fear or threats anymore. Fuck you.
Yeah.
You can take your fear and your threats and you can keep using them because I'm just going to be me anyway. And so we've seen that there's a very strong counterproductive output and product of that style of discipline. I think anyone who's been around long enough now understands smacking, timeouts, and those types of things don't work. But let's explore that for a second, because there's probably some people hearing this for the first time and going, what do you mean smacking doesn't work? I was smacked every day of my life and I turned out fucking fine. It's like, yeah, well, let's explore that, And I said the same thing. I think I even said this to you, Vanessa. Like I shared a photo a couple of years ago on my Facebook page where I said, I was spanked as a child and I grew up with a condition called respect for my elders. And I remember I received a torrent of abuse. And I just remember thinking at the time, oh, look, I ended up fine. But it wasn't until years later where I started unraveling my work that I was like, holy shit, I'm not fine. And part of the not fine part of me is actually because of this style of discipline. So let's look at that. Old school discipline, what is it? Where did it come from and why doesn't it work?
So old school discipline comes out of a theoretical perspective that I shall call behaviorism. And behaviorism is all about, we see a behavior, we don't like it, we want to squash it. And so we do whatever it takes to squash it. And I'll tell you what, a child is, whining or not cooperating or whatever, and you smack them upside the head, guess what? You probably squashed the behavior. And so if the goal was to extinguish the behavior, then you've met the goal. And that's why behaviorist approaches to discipline, everything from smacking to timeouts to consequences to removal of privileges and even the use of reward systems, those kinds of behaviorist approaches to discipline, they work if your goal is extinguish the behavior. The challenge is that in the extinguishing of the behavior, focusing just on the external presentation of the child, the behavior, we have lost sight of what's behind that. Behind that is a human being with a heart and a soul and a child who has, by definition and by perfect ordination, an as yet immature brain. We've just missed it all. And we ask children through those means of discipline to shelve their own development in order to serve us, because we like it. It's more convenient for us. It makes us feel better when the 2-year-old isn't biting and the 4-year-old can share and the 6-year-old does their chores without whining and the 12-year-old is keeping up with everything at school. It makes us feel better. And so we can sometimes sell out to these quick fix strategies in order to secure the good behavior. And then as we progressed through time, we realized, just as you have highlighted, there's a lot of deleterious outcomes connected to that kind of parenting. Outcomes such as we have ruptured the relationship between ourselves and our children. Outcomes such as our children learn that they must perform in order to be worthy, valuable, and accepted in this life that they are living. Outcomes that include, a lot of problematic things in terms of the template that we have designed for them over the life course. We even know from brain imaging studies that the area of the brain that fires up during physical abuse of a child is the same area of the brain firing up when we have used things like timeouts, and those kinds of physical isolation techniques.
And
And
I'm
so,
I'm so I'm so glad you went there because obviously, I'm a big fan of Gabor Mate, and one of
mm,
his, I guess you could say, guiding scientific principles is understanding the trauma brain and understanding the impacts of trauma, what it has on the brain, but more importantly, of the development of the neuroanatomy of the brain and also blood flow. And so I know he's found correlations between, and he refers to addiction and trauma being a spectrum. On down one end of the spectrum, we've got light trauma, which might be, the loss of privileges. And at the other end, we've got, severe emotional and physical abuse. What I'm curious to know is, how do we as parents, first of all, understand the importance of safety, but why is safety so important? Because if we don't create this safe space, well, their brain's going to potentially maldevelop. But what does that mean? Like, in the context of your work, if a child doesn't feel safe and their brain responds the same way to, a timeout or a physical discipline as it would to a trauma, what are we actually doing to that brain?
mhm. And so the brain will grow in a way that is highly adaptive to the circumstances around the child. And so if a child is living in an environment where emotional safety is constantly in question, alongside physical safety perhaps, but that safety in general is in question, then the child has to have a nervous system that is vigilant, that is fired up, that is on guard, that is waiting for the other shoe to drop all the time. And so their brain, in a miraculous, incredible way, will adapt to that reality. Now think about what that brain then becomes very good at. That brain becomes very good at being stressed. That brain becomes very good at being dysregulated. Not so good at getting itself settled back down to calm, right? And so now fast forward 30 years when that child's an adult, what does that child look like in their relationships when things become frustrating or hard? What does that child look like in their job when things become frustrating or hard? They're going to look like somebody who struggles to manage emotion and hang on to themselves. And probably underneath that, they will have this enduring belief system that they're not valued, they're not worthy, they're not safe.
So is it fair to say that most forms of discipline become ultimately and unconsciously a bonding strategy, one that is traumatically based and often leads to people developing trauma bonding strategies at an intimate level, which leads to them choosing partners where I don't understand why I keep choosing a partner where this keeps coming up. Is there any connection?
I think there probably is connection because I think, as you said a little bit earlier, it is in the world of discipline that parenting so often gets off track. And
Yeah.
I find in my work, most of the time, I'm not dealing with what I like to call a layer one issue. And layer one is your child has a really intense and sensitive temperament. And so life is kind of, intense for them. Or layer one might be, okay, your husband died and your child is now dealing with that kind of significant loss and having to incorporate it. I mean, we have all these layer one kinds of challenges that present. The problem becomes when they get misinterpreted. The fallout from those gets misinterpreted, then we grow a layer two. And the layer two is all of the hell that we create because of how we're reacting to the expression of emotional distress that came with the layer one. And so really, to go back to the question, discipline is where things kind of go off track. And it is in that realm that we see all of these really challenging relational dynamics play out.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. It's only really been in the last 5 years that I've really unraveled my bonding strategies, my trauma bonding, but also my blueprints, like at an intimate level. And this was only one that came to me recently, and I haven't actually shared this one publicly just yet, but I think this would probably serve a lot of people. One of the things that I found, as you know, I've dealt with issues around self-worth, self-esteem earlier in my life and my career. I've done obviously an enormous amount of work. But it wasn't until recently that I actually realized that I grew up with a single mum who used to always say that, she's not going to settle down till she meets the right man who has a lot of money. And that was the ongoing theme in our household from dot. And as a result, my mum didn't date very often. She only got engaged once. That didn't end as well as it could have. But it wasn't until recently where I was starting to I used to believe that my drivers for money were void based on, I grew up in a low socioeconomic environment, a single mum on a pension. and I wanted the things that I couldn't have. And it was only until recently I was like, holy crap, no. What's been driving me has not been trying to get stuff. What's been driving me is this little boy who's been trying to fit into this model of what his mum told him for 15 years of what the perfect man looks like, to a woman that I considered to be the ultimate woman in the world. And when that unraveled for me, holy crap. I literally went back through so many different relationships, and even looking at the dynamic of being of attraction patterns, and looking at, okay, why is it that I'm attracted to a certain personality and that is not compatible, yet I'm not attracted to another personality that is actually very compatible? And I actually started to, as I do, overthink things and go, well, hang on, where did this come from? And I started to realize that even those patterns came from that bonding that I had, with that maternal and that paternal figure. And I think oftentimes as parents, we're like, fuck, is this something else I've got to, it's not like there's not enough things that we've got to do as parents already, but now I've got to be hyper conscious of how I love my child. And so the question I'd ask you is, how do we develop a level of awareness on, how we, first of all, create and set in a blueprint, but more importantly, how we teach our kids how to love. And an extension of that would be, when a little girl comes home crying from school and she's like, oh, mummy, there's a boy at school and he teased me. And the most parents would say, oh, that's because he likes you, darling. And that becomes the fundamental building block of, well, if someone likes you, they treat you bad. And so to me, from a connection standpoint, from a bonding standpoint, as parents, do we need to be, or should we be consciously looking at and developing routines around how we connect and how we bond with our children? Or should we just let it flow and hope that it just works and that we've done enough work for it to stick better this time?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, make your peace right now, all you parents in the land, with the idea that your children will suffer their greatest wounds at your hands. It's just how it goes. My children will suffer their greatest wounds at my hands. And that's the nature of being a human being. And so you're not really messing it up when you mess your kids up. Welcome to the club. We're all doing it, right? And to know that you cannot script the human condition. And so if your child comes home from school and they're crying about something and you're like, oh, but I just read this really great book on that, and they said that you're supposed to get down to their eye level, you're supposed to, drop your voice so that it feels really soft and squishy to them, you're supposed to place your hands on their shoulders, and then you're supposed to say the following 5 things. Your kids are going to be like, who are you? And why did you have to go read a book to figure me out? I don't feel safe with you anymore. Right? Instead, it is upon us to be for our children what they need us to be, not to do to our children what we think we ought to be doing so that they can grow up with a blueprint that allows them to manifest their greatest potential. And so when we talk about being, it requires us to go inside. Do you see your child for the very one that they are? Or are you seeing your child through your own lens, through your own perception? And so when your kid walks through the door crying, how can you stay present? How can you not go to, oh my God, why did I put them in this school where all these awful kids are that are, making all of this stuff go wrong for them? Or how do you not go to, oh, my kid is sad, I haven't done it right? You have to just stay present. This boy was mean to you. Tell me about that. How was that for you? And then what did he say? And then how did you feel? I get that was hard. See them and hear them. See them and hear them. In fact, there is no guide or manual for raising kids, but if we could all just tattoo on our arms, see them and hear them to the power of infinity, that's what it takes.
Maybe I overthink these things, and I often do, but I've really become a lot more conscious of how I bond with Noah, and also how I bond with other people. And I know this might sound strange, but for a long time, I never really enjoyed talking about my problems with other people for the sake of talking about my problems. But I noticed that socially is what a lot of people will do as a form of connection. And I also noticed that, that kids pick this stuff up pretty quickly as well. But for me, I have actually found myself really developing a high level of consciousness around the conversations that I have with Noah, but more importantly, the dynamics that we use to connect. Am I overthinking this? And I know I tend to do this kind of thing, but for me, I'm really enjoying seeing the product of, a conscious form of connection.
So when you talk about the way that you're connecting with him, what are the kinds of things that you're observing?
Well, first of all, I'll take it back a step because for me, I'm someone who's quite socially awkward. And I've noticed that I'm socially awkward in a whole range of situations. And I'm even, I guess you could say, I don't feel awkward, but I even sometimes find it unusual to relate to my son and as a social being. Does this make sense? And so when I
Mhm.
have those moments of, well, we could just sit here and just kind of hang, or I could actually engage with you and do something. I'm doing rather than playing for the sake of play. I'm thinking, how can I engage in something that is going to be meaningful, that is actually going to create a positive bonding strategy that hopefully will become, like a social routine for us. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah, I hear you. And I would say try to find a way to sit in the middle of it, that you get to
Well, we do
just
that
be.
perfectly because but that's the thing. We do that all the time. Like literally all the time. We just hang out and we are in each other's presence. But there are times when, I feel like I should be teaching him social interaction, and I know he learns that from a whole range of places as well. But I know he's learning it from me. Yeah, I don't know. To me, it's a real theme right now.
The word teach becomes a thing, I think. And whenever we're getting wrapped up in teaching, we've probably started to wander off the path of being.
Yeah,
And so
so
teaching is sort of separate from being. Teaching has an attachment to a form and an outcome. Being is more like allowing it to unfold. And I think, I know in myself, and certainly when I've connected with other parents through the work that I do, I think sometimes we go to teaching when we're feeling uncomfortable or uncertain. And so
mm.
it's an opportunity to invite ourselves to sit in the moment and see what happens and get curious.
Well, I'm totally down for that. Let's loop back to discipline. I didn't close that loop. We did talk about the how, what, why of what old school. Let's explore some new school concepts that
Mm.
are not only psychologically supportive but also achieve more goals than just extinguishing the behavior. One of the concepts that you talk about in discipline is slow as fast. So why don't you expand on that for me again?
Yeah. And so development is a real thing. We cannot, by downward extension, take the expectations that we have of our children when they become adults and apply them to them as children, because children are not tiny adults. They are children. And so instead, when we honor the very ones that they are and we come alongside their development, regardless of where they're at, understanding also that development is not just governed by age and stage, but also governed by environment and temperament and all of these other kinds of things, then we can meet the child where they are. And when we meet them where they are and we connect with them around discipline rather than disconnecting from them around discipline, we actually create a foundation that allows them to grow in the manner that nature intended. And so the idea is to go to connection over disconnection in order for the child to grow.
So what does that look like? My son has just eaten something he shouldn't have, has just done something he was told not to do, has been a right little naughty boy or a naughty girl. What does that look like?
So think about it as a mountain. And to stay at the
Hmm.
peak of the mountain, where everybody wants to be, because the views from the top are really spectacular, you have to be balanced because the slope on either side of the mountain is very steep, right? And so the balancing forces that are going to hold you at the peak of the mountain are firm and kind at the same time. And so firm would be that is not what we are eating. And I know it's hard, right? You really love whatever the snack was. And it was hard for you not to go and sneak one of those when daddy wasn't looking. I really get why that would be so tricky for you. And you will not do that again. Do you understand? And so you get the balancing message of firm and kind, firm and kind. Now, to
Why
take
do I
a
get the feeling that if it was just you and your child, it'll be like, "Do you understand?" I feel like there'd be
Do you
there'd be like
know that
eyes glow red.
my boys, when they were little, they used to call it mommy's meaning business voice. So there might be a bit of truth to that.
I have no doubt there is. I'd put money on it. I saw
Nobody
it in your
messes
eyes.
with the great mother. um, there's also a little bit of follow-up around that, because if the young child has not been able to manage their impulses around something, so they ate something they weren't supposed to, or they smacked their brother because they wanted to steal his toy, or whatever it was, they didn't manage their impulses around that, and then you get firm and you come alongside with kindness, don't delude yourself into thinking that then means they will never ever again do that behavior. Of course they will. They will do it again because their brain is not yet quite developed enough for them to be able to hold on to their impulses. And so that's going to repeat. And your job again is going to be to come alongside, firm and kind. How many times? As many times as it takes.
Boundary. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Mm.
And
So,
if you have been a parent who's been erasing your boundaries, well, you in for a ride now. Because when you get firm and kind, they're going to go on for a long time.
But this is where, to me, it really landed in terms of the long-term perspective, and I'm pretty sure it was the conversation we had last time where it really became clear that, in order for kids to trust that, like, kids obviously need us now, or I should say at the ages of, what they need us all the time, but kids are obviously most dependent upon us between the ages of 1 and 8. But it would almost appear like they really need us, especially in the ages of puberty, because they're moving into that space. It's a new dimension, chemically, physically, in every respect. And to me, I've seen myself go through this. I've seen so many of my friends go through it, where they get to that change of life and they don't have that structure or that foundation of trust within their family to be able to talk about stuff that's going on. And as a result, chaos can ensue. So how do we maintain that trust so that when we get to that critical point, that the kids will still engage with us?
Yeah, and the key is, of course, in an ideal world, to start from the very beginning, where you have always, every time your child put a bid out, we talk about as psychologists, serve and return. And so the child puts a bid out and the parent returns. The baby cries and the parent responds. The 2-year-old has a big meltdown, the mother of all meltdowns, in a public space. You don't go to embarrassment, you go to compassion and you respond. The 5-year-old's frustrated with their brother, you go to compassion and you respond. And so as you get that dance going, then the child knows to trust the dance, that is the way that it's all going to unfold. So by the time we get to the adolescent stage, where we really as parents must be very careful not to retire too soon, because they may be walking around, in adult bodies and getting hairy and stinky, speaking from my own experience, and they still really need us. They need to continue to be in the dance with us, to know that we can be counted on, that they are, by definition in adolescence, they're going to be taking risks. Their brains are black and white thinking right now. And so they're going all big and trying things on for size and figuring out who they are and how they're going to fit in the world. And there will be times when that works out really beautifully for them and times when it really doesn't. They need to know that we'll be there to answer with compassion. And so the dance continues. And I'm 45 years old. The dance with my parents still continues. I still dance back to them. And so it never really ends.
One of the things that I've really enjoyed about using this philosophy is with Noah, the conversations that we have around discipline are so profound. Oftentimes it requires, when the big emotions have to calm down, which can require, okay, well, let's just wait a while before we can talk about it. But yeah, I've discovered that we not only have incredibly deep conversations for a 6-year-old, but it's also, I've started to notice in the last 9 months that he's actually demonstrating critical thinking. Like he's actually being able to, whereas once upon a time he would do something and then would sit down and go, okay, so why did you do that? What could have been better? A little bit of a, why did you do that? What could you run better? How could we do it next time type of a strategy? And I've noticed now where he's actually said a couple of times, Daddy, I was going to do that, but I didn't because I thought about it and that would have happened. So I decided not to. And I remember just going, oh my
freaking God, jackpot. It's like,
Yeah.
he's only done it twice. But to me, that was like, wow, that is a product of that process versus kids perhaps getting to a situation where like, oh, am I going to get in trouble here? All I know is let's just stress because that's going to be the outcome either way. And now I can't think anymore. And I think, most forms of discipline I'm observing teach kids not how to think because it induces stress, which doesn't enable us to process the situation or the circumstances versus the conversation, although it can take time to get to. And sometimes it's taken hours, if not a day, but we will always come back to it. Yeah, it's been quite profound. So I'm very grateful for that. So one of the things that I also learned through, our discussions, which is the greatest threat that a child has is the threat of disconnection. But it's often the number one threat that parents use for compliance. And it was quite profound, but it didn't sink in straight away. But when it did, it hit quite hard because when we think about it as parents or as a child, their number one safety net is that in the energetic line to us. And if they don't have that, that's when disarray and chaos mentally can happen for them. I think it's pretty obvious as to why people use threat as a form of compliance. But let's say you're in a situation where you require expedient performance. You may not be in a slow as fast environment. How do you navigate a situation that might involve public viewing, and you've got people looking? You're in a situation like, okay, I'm kind, I'm calm, I'm firm, but we need to move here, and the kid's not moving. What do we do?
So the first thing is to press out the gaze, press out the feeling that everybody is looking in upon you, because you're not here in the service of those people. You're here in the service of your child. And do you know when Gandalf takes his staff and he slams it down into the ground and he says, "Thou shalt not pass," and that energy comes out and like nobody's messing with him. That's the energy that comes out of you as a parent when you have earned the right, when you have earned parental context because you have established a trusting relationship with your child. When you step in with that kind of energy, they'll be like, "Ding, okay." Right? And the other thing is that if a child has really and truly flipped their lid, meaning that the downstairs brain has become all really activated, all the emotional circuitry, so the upstairs brain, where the thinking processes are housed, flips off, right? So they've gone limbic. There's nobody home. You cannot control a child who has lost control of themselves. How many times do you hear parents saying, "Stop that, I told you, don't do that again, I said, stop it," right? And the child is just out of control. Because your "stop it" now isn't landing. Remember, the lid is flipped. They've gone limbic. Nobody's home. And so when our children are very young and they have this propensity towards going limbic at times, the good news is you're still way more bigger than they are. Get in there and take care of it. If you got to move, you got to move. "Okay, darling, this is all done. I know you don't want to go. We are leaving now. You can hold my hand and walk, or I'll be picking you up. Which do you prefer?" "Oh, it's hard for you to make a choice right now." "That's all right. I got you. I'll pick you up. Off we go." Rah, rah, rah. "I know, you're really mad." Firm, kind.
Lying. All kids do it. It happens at a range of different stages for a range of different reasons. What is it? Why do kids do it? And how do we navigate it?
Kids lie to not be seen for who they really are. And we teach them to lie. We teach them to lie because we make them wrong for being the ones who they really are. So if they were the child who, did that thing to their sibling or stole that snack or did whatever, and then we make them wrong for that, we teach them to lie. We teach them to not get caught next time around. And so over time, the message that can be onboarded when we demand our children's good performance in order for them to feel accepted by us, the message that gets onboarded is, I must conceal who I really am. Because who I really am is not okay. And so I shall become something else.
So how do we teach honesty? Is it just a matter of practicing honesty?
So as a big person, of course, you walk your talk. You live in honesty yourself. You bring that kind of energy to the environment. And rather than teaching it directly, understand that it is something that your children will absorb indirectly when you accept them for the ones that they truly are, when they aren't made wrong for being human. How many of us can say that we have never, ever, ever done anything wrong? Nobody. We
Oh man,
can't
that's a
say it because we're all
halo.
human.
Yeah. But in terms of dealing with lying, like I know for me personally, I've kind of, I don't know if I made this up or if I learned it from yourself or somewhere else. I remember as a kid whenever I lied, I got in massive trouble for lying. And so I remember as a kid, it didn't so much teaching me not to lie, not that I was a very dishonest kid, but it just taught me not more about just, it's a lot more dangerous to get caught than it is to
Yes.
perhaps lie. But it also taught me to be afraid to tell the truth, because there were situations where I didn't feel comfortable with something and then I did tell the truth and I got in big trouble for it. And one of the things that I've been practicing with Noah is when he does engage in the act of lying, first of all, calm and kind, very assertive, but then actually encouraging to the point of where he's honest and then creating a big moment around that. And I try to create a big moment around, yeah, oh my God, you're honest, to really help him understand that, he might lie, but if he lies and then he tells the truth, he's still going to be okay. Is that, like, am I just setting him up to think that it's going to be okay to lie, or am I actually, creating a positive reinforcement here that could actually have an impact on, his, on that behavior at this stage of his life anyway?
I think it's bigger than all of that. I
Yeah,
think that
right.
you honor him for being the very one who he is. He gets to feel, remember the tattoo, seen and heard. And so
Mm.
you acknowledge, because actually if he lied and you knew about it and he knew that you knew about it and then you didn't say anything to him about it, that would be scary for him. Because he'd be like, where's my dad? Why aren't you showing up? This is where you're supposed to show up. Right? And so you show up and you say to him, that's a no-go. And then he gets to tell you what really was happening, and you show up there again. And all the while, you just give him the experience of being seen and heard and not made run for the very one that he is. I've always said to my boys, you will never, ever, ever be in trouble for telling the truth. The truth is always the way. And they have, they're adolescent boys now. They're 13 and 16. And they've come to me with really huge, significant things in the last year to 2 years. And I've been able to be the landing place for that because we have that kind of understanding.
Gratitude. I hear a lot of parents talk about how their kids are ungrateful little shits. And I find it curious because it seems to be a little bit of a pattern. And I'm curious if it's not so much a behavior as it is just a phase that kids go through at some phase in their life.
Or maybe all of us as parents are ungrateful little shits.
Ooh, okay.
So the world around us is but a reflection. If that is what you
Yeah.
are seeing in your child, a lack of gratitude, they are just a mirror. They're reflecting back to you what's on the inside of you. So when the judgment is, my child is ungrateful, where are you ungrateful? Where is it that you fail to have gratitude for the things in your life, including your child, who right now has just offered up to you on a silver platter a lesson to be learned, right? Have gratitude for that. And when we can live that way, when we can ooze gratitude out our own pores, our children will live in the field of gratitude. Our children will be at the effect of that. They will marinate in it and soak it in through their cells and on up into their neurons, and it'll write a narrative upon their very souls about how it is that we be human in this life that we're living. And so to be that for our children. And then whenever I hear this, but my kids are so ungrateful, in the back of my mind, I see this bright, blinking neon sign. You're a victim. You're a victim. You're a victim.
Wow.
And so your program is just loud. I'm being victimized by my ungrateful little shits of kids, right? And so then that's your work.
Oh, I love that.
And
Oh,
you
that's gonna
have
land.
you have gratitude for your children around offering you that lesson.
And that's exactly what I say. You have gratitude for your children for offering you that opportunity, that that lesson, that work. Family integrations. I know, as we mentioned earlier, you've just you're now happily engaged. Look at that spicing ring you've got on there. Massive congratulations to you.
Thank
But you're
you.
obviously been going through the process of integrations, and I'm going through that process now myself. I deal with a lot of entrepreneurs as well as parents, both in our community and also on social, that go through the same thing, and they often reach out and ask questions around, well, look, I'm now dating someone, they've got a child, or we've been dating for a period of time, or we're now married, or we're now going to be moving our families together, or we're going to start introducing. How do you, because it's one thing to go from, and I know you knew this with my journey, being in a relationship where you've got a child, to being a single parent, to then being in a relationship with someone who doesn't have a child. But it's different when you get in a relationship with someone who does have a child, and now you're integrating 4 personalities or more if you're Brady Bunch. Have you learned some of the best ways to do that in a really, in a conducive way? Like, obviously, there's not going to be any surefire way. You and I both know that. But I am curious about some of the lessons that you've learned with that.
Yeah. And so I think the number one thing is to understand that that course must be charted by the grown-ups. And so that we have to step in and be in the lead of that blending together of the families, and allow for our children to feel that they can rest in our care and rest in our wisdom. And second to that, what I would say is that the pathway to relationship with a child is always, always, always through the existing attachments. And so if you are partnered with somebody and then that person has children, you get to gain connection to those children through the partner. So you go through that relationship in order to get access to the child's heart. You don't go direct to the child. And it's important for us to understand that that's how it's all going to unroll. The final piece of that is to know that the person that you are partnered with who has a child is not the only person that you must go through to get the heart of that child, because that child has another parent somewhere else. And really, if you want to blend in a way that is ultimately connected and full of attachment and belonging, you have to welcome all of the parents into the dynamic, not necessarily concretely. So it may be just an embodiment of energy around that, but you welcome all of those connections, and then you gain access to the child through their existing attachments. They're 2 parents.
And when it comes to blending kids, have you got any tips or tricks? Oh, that sounds horrible. Or things that you've learned when it comes to blending kids? Because obviously there's the parental dynamic, which comes with it, a whole range of things, which is number one is connection, but also is the extension of authority, and that being blended. But then you've got I guess you could say the kid dynamics of blending the new personalities in the room and doing that in a way, and I know for me personally, sharing my own experience with Noah and Ayana, it's been fascinating to watch. And one of the things that we've found has worked really well, and this is probably what you're going to say, is just by not forcing it and allowing the kids to come together to the point where there's a level of friction, and then we just take them apart. We both, everyone goes back to their own homes, their own corners, to build a level of desire till they want to come back. And it's like, great, they want to see each other. Yeah, we built, and we literally did that on and off over a period of months, to the point now where the kids have spent the last 7 days together, and we've barely had any fights whatsoever. But I'm curious, outside of perhaps that example, are there any things that you've learned when it comes to blending kids, which can often have their own dynamics separate to the parents?
Yeah. And so whenever we're looking at the dynamics between siblings, be they bonus siblings or siblings just in the family of origin, when we're looking at blending, we have to understand that the relational dynamics will flow from the parents, not because of who the children are. And so the first bit of business around all of that is to know, as the incoming bonus parent, the new one in the hood, you got no business parenting that child. No business, because you have not yet established relational context from which to have the trust, that dance that we spoke about earlier, for the child to be able to lean into that. And you will sink your ship. You will sink your ship if you try to be the parent right out of the gates. You have got to earn your place. It comes not from a place of role, but rather from a place of relationship. And then when the children are starting to blend together, the dynamic, I love what you said about letting it just be natural and not having it be forced, because when it's forced, it's coming from your need for that to work rather than from the children being able to just float through life and float through this dynamic in a way that really works for them. And when there starts to be friction, sometimes it's just because, different personalities and different things, but oftentimes really entrenched friction between bonus siblings comes from relational patterns back up to parents that are not working. So this child to their bonus parent, it's not working. Or this child to their biological parent, it's not working. It will play out in the dynamic of the sibling relationship. And so whenever you see that playing out in an entrenched kind of way, not the things that you described with Noah, but a real dynamic now that has taken hold of the relationship, you've got to retreat. You retreat back to parent-child and bonus parent-child and see where the relationships have gone off track.
I love it. So what's next for you? You've always got something up your sleeve, always something on the boil. Have we got another book in the works? What have we got?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I always say, but it's still too soon. I really want to write the divorce book. I think, there's a lot of talk about conscious divorce or about, divorce that works for kids, but very rarely do people bring those two things together where we're talking about the developmental needs of children and this whole thing of divorce, including the blending of families. And so I want to write that book. And just when I think I'm, okay, cool, I'm ready, I'm going to do this now, then I hit another rock bottom in my own life and realize, okay, yeah, not yet. Got to live it a little more. So I'm just going to
build a bit more content first.
It's going to be a really great book when I do write it.
It's going to be like a 3-part Harry Potter series.
That's right.
I hope you're still playing with the name Divorce Without Damage, because I do love that name and it does make a great addition to your titles.
Don't tell anyone though.
No one will know. No one except for me and you and me and the few million viewers. But Vanessa, I always enjoy our conversations. I really do. The fact that we've had you come and speak for our K2s 3 times now, the fact that we've got you on the podcast twice. I just can't spend enough time with you. You have and for those people who are listening, this is one lady who's had a significant impact on my life in so many ways. It's really hard to say. But what I can say is thank you. You've had a huge impact on my life, a huge impact in our community. And also, many people who I care about closely as well. So for those people who would like to know more about you, what you do, your books, products, services, everything, where can they go to find out more about Vanessa?
The best place is to go to drvanessalapointe.com, drvanessalapointe.com, and to come and hang out with me on social. I'm on Instagram and Facebook mostly, and put lots of content out on all different levels of parenting. And so you can come and see.
But Vanessa, thank you so much. We're going to have to do number 3. I look forward to having you back.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This episode was brought to you by Nail It and Scale It, the world's leading fast growth program for business. There you have it, guys. Thanks for tuning in to Unstoppable with me, your host, Kerwin Ray. And please do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you get to see all of these interviews in the flesh. Share this podcast with your friends and drop me a review on iTunes. I would love to hear what you guys think, and also let you know your comments help make sure that we keep producing killer content just like this. And if you'd like to stay up to date with all of my movements, upcoming podcasts, events, and much more, please jump onto the website kerwinray.com and also check us out on all social media on the handle @KerwinRay. Thanks for joining us.